I didn't mean to overhear it, but when my brother-in-law called my sister a fat pig on her own wedding day, I froze. Everyone was smiling, cameras flashing, and I was standing 3 feet behind him, listening to the man she'd just married tear her apart under his breath. That moment, those 5 words, destroyed everything we thought was perfect. And I still ask myself, why didn't I stop the ceremony right then? If you've ever kept a secret that could ruin someone's life, you'll understand what I'm about to confess. Before we dive into what really happened in Savannah that night, hit subscribe, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is where you are. I love seeing our community all around the world. And while you're at it, drop a comment. Would you have told your sister right away, or stayed silent like I did? Savannah, Georgia. Late afternoon, 82 degrees, the kind of humid warmth that makes perfume hang in the air like memory. The Magnolia House looked like something out of a magazine. White columns wrapped in magnolia garlands, mason jar candles lining the steps, every table trimmed in gold and ivory. It should have been the happiest day of my sister Emily's life. I'd spent months helping her plan it, tasting cakes, choosing linens, talking her through the late-night doubts that every bride has. Now she stood at the top of the garden path in a lace gown that caught the light just right, smiling so wide it almost hurt to look at her. And Jake, my brand-new brother-in-law, looked every bit the charming Southern gentleman. Dark blue suit, champagne tie, polished grin that could sell forgiveness itself. Nobody would have guessed that only minutes earlier he'd hissed those 5 words that wouldn't stop replaying in my head. She looks like a fat pig in that dress. I tried to shake it off, to tell myself I'd misheard. But the way his brother Daniel's smile faltered confirmed it. He'd heard too. He'd just chosen silence over truth, just like I did. As the string quartet began Canon in D, I felt my stomach twist. Every guest rose, phones lifted. Emily floated down the aisle toward the man who had already stripped her dignity before promising her forever. "Don't ruin this for her, Rachel," I whispered to myself. "She deserves her moment." Jake took her hands, and in front of 200 people he said the words, "I do," like he meant them. Everyone cheered. I clapped too, but my palms stung with guilt. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the applause rolled through the garden like thunder. For a heartbeat, I let myself believe maybe it had all been a cruel misunderstanding, that love really could drown out cruelty. Then, as they turned toward the crowd, Jake leaned close to Emily's ear and muttered something I couldn't catch. But whatever it was made her smile falter, just for a second. A second no one else noticed. Foreshadowing, that's what writers call it. Back then, I called it nerves. Inside the reception hall, the golden light of early evening made everything glow. Guests laughed, servers poured champagne, and I moved through the crowd like someone watching her own dream from underwater. Everything beautiful, but slightly distorted. Everywhere I looked, Jake's charm worked like a spell. He kissed babies, thanked relatives, toasted photographers. If there were awards for acting, he'd have taken home an Oscar. And Emily, my sweet, trusting sister, radiated joy that looked almost borrowed. Her cheeks flushed pink, her eyes glassy with happiness, and maybe a little wine. For a few minutes I convinced myself to breathe again. Maybe he was nervous. Maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe every sister overprotects. I reached for a flute of champagne from a passing tray, thinking about how I'd toast to their future, how I'd keep the secret buried forever. Then a voice behind me, Aunt Linda's, broke the trance. "That Jake sure is smooth, isn't he?" "Too smooth, if you ask me." I turned, half smiling. "Be nice, Aunt Linda. It's their wedding day." She shrugged, eyes narrowing toward the couple across the room. "I just hope your sister knows what she's getting into." And that's when I noticed Jake's phone light up on the gift table beside me. One short vibration, one new message. from someone named Kay, and the preview line made my heart stop. "You owe me for keeping quiet." "Quiet about what?" I whispered. If I'd known then how deep that question would take me, to lies, to betrayal, to the truth about who Jake Henderson really was, I might have smashed that phone right there. But I didn't. I pocketed my guilt, lifted my glass, and pretended everything was still perfect. You can always tell when something inside you breaks. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, like a window cracking somewhere far away. That's how it felt when I saw that text on Jake's phone. The reception was in full swing now, laughter spilling from every table, the band playing some soft country cover, kids chasing bubbles across the dance floor. Emily looked radiant, cheeks flushed with the kind of joy I'd always wanted for her. But my eyes kept finding Jake. He moved like he owned the room, hand on her back, eyes darting across the tables, that perfect smile plastered on like armor. And every few minutes I'd see his phone light up in his jacket pocket. From Kay? Again. Each time my pulse quickened. Who was Kay? A friend? A business contact? Or something worse? I didn't want to believe what my gut was screaming, because Emily deserved her perfect night, and I wasn't about to ruin it over a text I shouldn't have seen. So I swallowed the suspicion, smiled for photos, danced with my nephew, pretended, until the toasts began. The maid of honor, Emily's college roommate Jessica, went first, voice trembling, words soft and nostalgic. Everyone laughed, everyone cried. Then Jake stood to give his. "When I met Emily," he said, "I knew she was the one, because she never stopped believing in me, even when I didn't deserve it." The crowd sighed. He had them wrapped around his finger. But then his tone shifted, barely noticeable, just a sharper edge to his words. "She's stubborn. She's fiery. And yes, she can be a little sensitive about her looks." The laughter that followed was awkward. A few guests chuckled politely. Emily's smile faltered. "But she's perfect to me," he added quickly. Applause filled the silence that followed, but Emily's eyes, those soft hazel eyes, had gone glassy. I could see the hurt hiding behind her practiced grin. I wanted to leap up, to call him out, to shout, "You don't get to humiliate her like that." But I didn't, because no one else seemed to notice. I looked across the room and caught Daniel's gaze, Jake's younger brother. He looked uneasy too, his jaw tight. He mouthed something that looked like later. After the toasts, I found him outside on the balcony, cigarette glowing faintly between his fingers. "Daniel?" I started, my voice shaking. What did he mean by that? That wasn't just a joke. He stared out toward the parking lot lights. "Jake's complicated," he said finally. "He's always had a temper, but he's trying to do better." Calling his bride a fat pig before the ceremony doesn't sound like trying. He flinched. "You heard that?" "Yeah, and I saw his texts from someone named Kay." Daniel crushed the cigarette beneath his shoe. "You shouldn't get involved, Rachel. You really shouldn't." That's when the alarm bells in my chest went from ringing to screaming. "Why not?" I demanded. "Because it's not your secret to carry," he said, "and because you have no idea what you're dealing with." He walked away before I could ask what that meant. Back inside, the night spun faster. The cake was cut, the bouquet thrown, laughter returning to the air like a scent that tried too hard to cover something rotten underneath. But Emily looked distant now. Between the dancing and the photos, she kept glancing toward Jake's phone whenever he stepped away. Once, I caught her checking it when she thought no one was looking. And in that brief moment, I saw the same expression on her face that I felt inside. Fear mixed with denial. She knew. At least part of her did. The music swelled. The guests started gathering for the final dance. Jake pulled her close, whispered something into her ear that made her tense. Her smile flickered like a dying candle. Then she turned, met my eyes across the dance floor, and mouthed 3 words I'll never forget. "He's not alone." The lights dimmed. The crowd cheered as they swayed together in the center of the room. But for me, the walls were closing in. Every instinct told me something was very, very wrong. And when I finally stepped outside to get some air, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "If you love your sister, keep quiet. Tonight isn't about you." Everyone remembers the "I do." But no one talks about the moments before. The stillness, the silence, the way the air changes when love becomes a performance. That's what I remember most about the ceremony. Not the music, not the flowers, the silence. The garden behind Magnolia House glowed under strings of white lights. Fireflies drifted over the pond, and a faint smell of honeysuckle carried through the evening air. Emily waited behind the double doors, clutching her bouquet so tightly the petals trembled. I stood beside her, adjusting the veil, trying to keep my voice calm. "Deep breath," I whispered. "You look perfect." She smiled, but her eyes darted toward the crowd beyond the doors. "Do you see Jake? Does he look nervous?" I peeked through the sliver between the curtains. He was standing at the altar, shoulders squared, charm turned all the way up. The photographer hovered near him, snapping every smile. "He's fine," I said. "Good," she breathed. "Because I've never seen him this quiet before. It's strange." There it was again, the crack in the surface. She wasn't just jittery, she was scared, though she didn't have the words for it. The music swelled. The doors opened. Everyone rose. Cameras flashed. And the perfect day rolled forward like it had been rehearsed 100 times. From my seat in the front row, I watched every detail. The lace of her gown brushing the aisle runner, Jake's eyes shining as she approached, the way he squeezed her hands just a little too tight. When the officiant began to speak, Jake barely looked away from her face. He played the part flawlessly, devoted, emotional, even wiping away a single tear that could have been bottled and sold for sympathy. But when it was Emily's turn to speak, something flickered across his expression. Annoyance? Disgust? I couldn't place it, but it was gone before anyone else could see. She promised to love him, for richer or poorer, and he smiled in a way that made my stomach twist. Because only later would I learn. He already had plans for both. "Do you, Jake Henderson, take Emily Cooper to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." The crowd sighed, 100 cell phones capturing forever. "Do you, Emily Cooper, take Jake Henderson to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," she whispered. It was soft, fragile, almost drowned out by the applause. When they kissed, the crowd erupted. The string quartet shifted into something triumphant. Emily's laughter rang through the garden like bells. For a fleeting second, I believed again. Believed that maybe I'd misjudged him. Until I saw Daniel. Standing at the back of the crowd, half in shadow, his eyes were locked on Jake. Not the way a proud brother looks, but the way someone watches a fire they can't put out. When he caught me staring, he shook his head. Slowly, deliberately. Then he disappeared behind the catering tent. After the ceremony, guests gathered under the oak trees for photos. I tried to catch Daniel, but he avoided me. Meanwhile, Jake handled everything. Positioning Emily, directing photographers, even telling the planner to skip the family portraits. We're on a schedule. Who rushes their own wedding photos? Emily hesitated. But Rachel's here. Later, Jake said, smiling tightly. We'll do a family session at the reception. I promise. He kissed her temple, gentle enough to look loving, firm enough to end the discussion. And just like that, another small decision slipped out of her hands. I remember noticing a man standing near the valet station, gray suit, sunglasses even though the sun had already set. He wasn't a guest. I knew every name on the list. He had a phone pressed to his ear, murmuring something while watching Jake and Emily pose. When I blinked, he was gone. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. Back then, I couldn't tell the difference. As the ceremony wound down, I went to help the planner collect cards and gifts from the table. A stack of white envelopes tied with satin ribbon, one of them slightly heavier than the rest. My name was written on it. I slipped it open. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a check. No signature, no note. Just one sentence typed neatly on plain paper. Keep your eyes open. He's not who he says he is. The check was for $5,000, and in the distance, Jake's laughter echoed under the magnolia trees. That was the moment I stopped pretending everything was perfect. Because secrets that come with a price tag never stay buried for long. Every wedding toast sounds the same when you play it back later. Laughter, clinking glasses, soft piano under words about forever. But that night, I heard something else between the words. Control, possession, a warning no one else caught. By the time we sat down for dinner, the garden had transformed into a fairy tale. Golden light washed over linen tables. The air hummed with quiet chatter and champagne fizz. Emily sat at the head table, cheeks pink, smile wide, hand wrapped around Jake's. From a distance, they looked like a magazine spread. But from where I sat, just close enough to read her face, I could see it. The tiny wince whenever he squeezed her fingers too tight. The way she'd start to speak, then stop when he placed a hand on her wrist. Little things no one else would notice, except maybe me. The first toast came from Uncle Mark. His trademark blend of dad jokes and heartfelt sentiment. The crowd laughed, the tension eased, and for a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, the evening would settle. Then came Jessica again, the maid of honor. She was bright, bubbly, sentimental. She talked about how Emily and Jake met, how he'd shown up at Emily's classroom one afternoon with flowers for no reason, how their love was the kind that makes other people believe again. Emily laughed, tears in her eyes. But Jake's smile froze halfway through. He leaned forward, whispering something I couldn't hear. Emily's laughter stopped. Jessica hesitated, lost her place in her notes, and hurried through the rest of her speech. One whisper, one small reminder of power. That's all it took. Then it was Jake's turn. He stood, glass raised, his voice smooth as silk. Tonight, I just want to thank everyone who helped make this day happen, especially Emily, who's been, well, she's been patient. Laughter rippled through the tables. He smiled wider, basking in it. She has a heart bigger than her appetite. The laughter froze. My chair scraped the floor as I half rose without realizing it. Emily's eyes darted to me, pleading silently. Don't. So I sat back down, hands trembling. Jake chuckled like it was all in fun. I mean that in the best way, of course. She loves to feed everyone. You should taste her lasagna. It's basically the reason I proposed. The guests laughed politely, relieved to have permission. Emily smiled too, but it was the kind of smile that hides behind glass. After the toasts, as everyone mingled, I found her near the dessert table. She was staring down at her plate, untouched slice of cake melting into the frosting. "Em?" I said quietly. She blinked, forcing a smile. "Don't start, Rach. It's fine. He's just nervous. Nervous doesn't give him the right to humiliate you." She shook her head, tears glistening. "He didn't mean it that way. You know how Jake jokes. Everyone laughed." "Yeah," I said. "Everyone always laughs. That's the problem." She turned away, her voice barely a whisper. "Please don't make this harder." That's what it's like to love someone who's already been rewritten by someone else. You can see the cracks, but they keep painting over them until even you start to doubt they're there. Later, during the bouquet toss, Jake stood at the edge of the crowd, hands in his pockets, watching her. Not with affection, with ownership. Every move she made, every laugh, Every person she spoke to, his eyes tracked. When their song played, he led her to the dance floor. From the outside, it looked romantic, her white dress swaying, his hand at her back. But when the music slowed, he leaned in close enough that only I could read his lips. "Next time, let me handle the talking." Her shoulders stiffened. And that was it. The moment I knew this wasn't nerves or a misunderstanding. It was a pattern, a script he was writing, one correction at a time. After midnight, as guests began to leave, I found myself helping gather centerpieces and half-empty glasses. Emily came over, barefoot now, carrying her heels in one hand. She looked tired but peaceful, that strange in-between place where relief and resignation meet. "You okay?" I asked. "Of course," she said. "It's just a lot." Jake appeared behind her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Everything okay here, ladies?" "Fine," Emily said quickly. He smiled. "Good, because I've got plans for us tonight." Something in his tone made my stomach knot. He kissed her cheek, and they turned toward the exit. She looked back once, just once, and the expression in her eyes wasn't love. It was apology. The kind you give someone before everything falls apart. The morning after a wedding always feels like waking from a spell. The lights are gone, the flowers wilt, and the truth starts to show through the glitter. By noon, the Magnolia House staff was clearing the last of the tables. I'd gone back to help Emily pick up a few forgotten things. Her clutch, some leftover favors, the vows she'd written by hand and never read aloud. The air smelled of stale champagne and cut roses. Emily was quiet, moving through the mess like someone walking through a dream. Jake had already left for what he called a business call, on their honeymoon morning. While she folded her gown into the garment bag, I started gathering cards from the gift table. That's when I saw it, a small silver phone sitting face down near a stack of napkins. Not mine, not Emily's, Jake's. The screen lit up when I brushed it. One new voicemail, unknown number. I should have left it alone. I really should have. But curiosity has a sound. It hums just loud enough to drown out reason. I tapped play. A woman's voice, low, clipped, angry. "You promised this was handled. I'm not waiting forever, Jake. You owe me answers, and I'm done being patient." The message ended with the rustle of paper, like something being torn. My stomach dropped. The timestamp was from the night before, the exact moment Jake had been on the dance floor with Emily. I replayed it twice, memorizing every word. Then I slipped the phone into my bag and told myself I'd give it back later, but later felt too far away. Back at Emily's apartment, boxes of wedding gifts filled the living room. She sat on the sofa in one of Jake's shirts, scrolling through her photos. "Look," she said softly, showing me a picture of the two of them cutting the cake. It really was perfect. I nodded, the phone heavy in my purse. "Did Jake say where he went?" "Some bank thing. He said it couldn't wait." She laughed weakly. "Classic Jake. Married 12 hours and already back to work." When she turned away, I pulled the phone out and slid it onto the coffee table. "You forgot this," I said. She blinked. "He must have left it at the venue." Then, before I could stop her, she pressed play on the voicemail. The room went still. Her eyes widened. Her hand flew to her mouth. Who is that?" she whispered. I swallowed. "I don't know. Maybe a client." But we both knew it didn't sound like business. She set the phone down as if it burned. "Rachel, promise me you won't tell anyone yet. I just need to think." I wanted to argue, to demand the truth, but she looked so fragile that I couldn't push. So I stayed, making tea, pretending we were just two sisters in the calm after celebration. That night, I couldn't sleep. The voicemail kept looping in my head. The next morning, I called Daniel. He answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. "Rachel, it's early. What's wrong?" "I found something. A voicemail. From a woman. Silence. Then he sighed. You weren't supposed to get involved. What does that mean, Daniel? Who is she? He hesitated. Someone from before Emily. Someone Jake said was gone. Gone where? Click. He hung up. Later that afternoon, Emily texted me. He says the phone's been hacked. He's furious. My hands went cold. Furious at who? Her? Me? Minutes later, my doorbell rang. A courier. Envelope. No return address. Inside, a single printed photo. Jake at a downtown restaurant, same suit from the wedding, holding hands with a woman whose face was turned away. Scrawled across the bottom in blue ink. You're not the first Mrs. Henderson. I drove straight to Emily's. She was pacing, phone clutched tight. He said some psycho is trying to ruin us, she blurted before I could speak. He's calling the police. Emily, look at this. I handed her the photo. Her breath caught. She looked from the picture to me, then back again. Where did you... It was delivered to me. No sender. Tears welled in her eyes. Rachel, I just can't deal with this right now. Then let me, I said. Let me find out who sent it. She shook her head, retreating. No. Jake will handle it. That sentence landed like a stone in my chest. Trust is loud when it's real. When it's forced, it whispers. That night, as rain began tapping against my window, I listened again to the voicemail. The tone, the threat, the certainty. Whoever she was, she wasn't gone. And Jake wasn't done lying. That message wasn't just a warning. It was an invitation to step deeper into a story I didn't yet understand. 2 days after the voicemail, I met Emily downtown at the Maple Room, a sunlit cafe nestled between a florist and a boutique. It was her idea. She wanted normalcy. Pancakes, coffee, sister talk. I arrived early, as I always did, claiming a corner booth with a view of the park. Atlanta mornings have that slow glow, golden against wet sidewalks. It should have been peaceful. Then she walked in. She looked radiant, but not in the newlywed way. More like she was performing happiness. Her hair was pulled too tight, her smile strained. Sorry I'm late, she said, sliding into the seat. Jake insisted on dropping me off. He's got a client meeting nearby. I caught the smallest flicker in her eyes when she said his name. The kind that says, please don't ask. We ordered, her, a fruit bowl, me, black coffee. She barely touched her food. I said finally, breaking the silence, about the voicemail. She froze. Rachel, please. Jake explained everything. What did he say? That it was an ex who's been stalking him for years, someone unstable. And the photo? She hesitated, then forced a small laugh. Fake. He said people can edit anything these days. I leaned forward. Do you believe that? She didn't answer, just stirred her coffee, staring at the swirl of cream like it might spell out an easier truth. Halfway through breakfast, her phone buzzed. A text from Jake flashed briefly before she flipped it face down. Where are you sitting? Who's around? Just checking in, she murmured, but her voice shook. Something was wrong. The kind of wrong that hides in plain sight. When the bill came, I reached for it, but she insisted. Jake doesn't like when people pay for me. Says it's his job now. Her words were light, but they scraped something deep inside me. That wasn't love. It was control dressed as chivalry. As we stood to leave, she touched my arm. Rachel, thank you for not judging. Jake's been through a lot. I just want peace. I nodded, though peace was the last word I'd use for what I saw in her eyes. Outside, the sky broke open with sudden rain. She pulled her coat tight while we waited for her ride. When Jake's black SUV pulled up to the curb, I expected him to wave. Instead, he lowered the window halfway and motioned impatiently. Emily hurried toward him, but as she reached for the door, I saw it. The phone in his hand. He wasn't scrolling. He was recording. Us. The window rolled up before I could say anything. The SUV pulled away, taillights slicing through the rain. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the text message and the recording. I called Daniel. "He's watching her, Dan. I think Jake's monitoring everything." He sighed. "You're letting your imagination run wild." "No, he's controlling her. You can see it." "Rachel, he's a CEO. People like that are cautious. It doesn't mean he's abusive." "Abuse doesn't always look like bruises," I snapped. "It looks like control, isolation." He was quiet. Then, "Just be careful. Jake's powerful, and he doesn't like interference." The line went dead. The next morning, I drove past Emily's apartment. Jake's car wasn't there. I parked and walked up anyway, buzzing her door. She opened it slowly, eyes rimmed red. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" "You didn't answer my calls. I got worried." She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. "He doesn't like me having visitors unannounced." There it was, the first real crack. "Emily," I said gently, "you don't have to live like this." She blinked back tears. "He loves me. He just wants to protect me from people who might hurt us." "Who, exactly?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You, Rachel. He says you're trying to ruin us." The words hit like a punch. "Me? What? Why would he say that?" She stepped back. "Please go, before he gets home." The door closed, and this time she locked it. I used to believe family could weather anything. But that night, I realized something darker. Once someone rewrites your version of reality, even love becomes a weapon. I stood in the hallway, listening to the muffled hum of her TV behind the door. Every instinct in me screamed to call for help, to tell someone. But who believes the sister with a hunch over the perfect new husband? As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "If you love her, stop digging. Jay." That was the first red flag I couldn't ignore, but I had no idea it would lead to the second woman and the truth that changed everything. Some truths don't shout. They echo, faintly at first, then louder, until you can't pretend you didn't hear them. For 2 days, I didn't call Emily. Every message I drafted felt dangerous, like it might make things worse. The unknown text, "If you love her, stop digging," kept replaying in my head, and I couldn't tell if it was a threat or a warning. But by the third morning, I couldn't sit still anymore. I opened my laptop, brewed black coffee, and decided to follow the only lead I had: the voicemail. The number was still saved on Jake's call log. I'd memorized it before returning the phone. I typed it into a search engine, expecting nothing. Instead, a small listing appeared. A florist shop in Savannah, Georgia. Haven Blooms. The name meant nothing at first, but when I clicked the image attached to the business profile, my breath caught. In the background of the photo, blurred, barely noticeable, was Jake, or someone who looked exactly like him, standing beside a woman in a white dress. The date on the photo? 4 years ago. I spent the next hour chasing digital ghosts, archived wedding photos on local blogs, old registry links, cached Facebook posts, and then, buried in the results, I found her. "Congratulations to Madison and Jake Henderson, a timeless Savannah ceremony." The caption was beneath a smiling couple outside a church, the bride holding a bouquet of white peonies. Her face was clear, her joy effortless. Same last name, same man. But Emily had said Jake had never been married before. I clicked through every image, my heart pounding. Madison was everywhere, radiant, alive, until about 6 months later, when her digital trail went silent. No new photos, no comments, no updates. Her florist shop, Haven Blooms, had posted once more that year. "In loving memory of our founder, Madison Lee Henderson, you will be missed." The post had one comment. From Jake, a single rose emoji. I leaned back, staring at the screen until it blurred. If Madison was dead, And Jake had been her husband. Why had he hidden it? Why had he told Emily she was his first? The question twisted in my gut like a key turning in a lock I didn't know existed. I called Daniel again. He didn't answer. I texted instead. Did you know Jake was married before? Madison Lee. Died 4 years ago. His reply came minutes later. Rachel, drop it, please. That was it. No denial. No surprise. Just exhaustion. Or fear. That evening, I sat by my window as Atlanta's skyline flickered with the soft orange of sunset. I thought about Madison, about how someone's entire life could fade into silence while the man she'd married started over, smiling, charming, untouchable. I opened Emily's wedding video on my phone, the one her friend had posted online, and then I saw it, something I hadn't noticed before. As Emily walked down the aisle, Jake was smiling. But just before she reached him, his eyes flicked down to a small silver bracelet on her wrist. A bracelet I remembered from the Savannah photos, Madison's bracelet. Emily didn't know. I called her. No answer. I texted, where did you get that silver bracelet? Please tell me. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Finally, a reply. It was a gift from Jake. Said it belonged to his mother. My heart sank. He was recycling pieces of his past, erasing Madison by handing her fragments to Emily. Grief leaves shadows, and sometimes people walk in them without knowing whose they are. That night, I printed everything. Screenshots, photos, the obituary. I slipped them into a folder and hid it in the back of my closet. Because if Jake could make one woman disappear from the record, I wasn't about to let him erase another. Madison's silence wasn't the end of her story. It was the start of mine. The more you stare at a picture, the more you start to see what's been cropped out. The folder sat in my closet for 2 days before I opened it again. I kept telling myself I'd imagined the connection, that Henderson was just a coincidence. But every time I looked at Emily's wedding photos, that silver bracelet caught the light like a tiny signal, flashing look closer. The research I spent the next evening buried in public records. Savannah County marriage licenses, property transfers, archived news clippings, quiet data trails most people never notice. And there it was, Jake Aaron Henderson, Madison Lee Carter. Married May 19th, 2019. No divorce record. But there was another document, filed 4 months later. Death certificate, Madison Lee Henderson. Cause, accidental fall. A shiver ran through me. I knew the way official language could hide pain. Accidental, convenient, closed. I called the number listed for Haven Blooms, expecting it to be disconnected. A woman answered. Her voice was warm but cautious. Hi, this is Rachel Montgomery, I said. I'm trying to find out more about the late Madison Henderson. A pause. You're not a reporter, are you? No, ma'am. I knew her husband once. A sigh. We all knew him, for a while. Handsome, generous, always talking about his investments. Her tone hardened. Until after Madison's funeral. Then he vanished. Didn't even settle her accounts. Did she ever mention anyone named Emily? No. But she used to say, Jake likes to start over when things get complicated. A long silence. Miss, if you're close to that man, be careful. Click. That night, I drove to Savannah. 4 hours of highway and heavy thoughts. I found Haven Blooms closed, the sign faded but still hanging. Through the dusty glass, dried bouquets leaned in forgotten vases. I left a small note under the door. If anyone still remembers Madison, please call me. Then I visited the cemetery listed on her certificate. Row 12, Plot 8. Her stone was simple. No flowers, no visits, just weathered marble. But someone had recently cleaned it, and at the base of the headstone lay a single white peony. Fresh. On my drive back to Atlanta, I couldn't shake the image of that flower. Someone was still visiting. Someone who didn't want her memory to fade completely. When I reached home, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No postage, no handwriting. Inside was a photo of Madison's grave, taken that morning, and a single line written on the back. Stop chasing ghosts. The living need you more. I checked the hallway. Empty. Emily called the next morning. Her voice was bright, forced. Jake's taking me to Savannah for the weekend. He says he wants to show me where he grew up. My heart pounded. Savannah? That's where his first wife... Rachel, stop, she cut in quickly. He told me about her. You were right. He was married before. But it ended tragically, and you digging it up hurts him. Emily, listen to me. There's more. I have to go. The line went dead. Patterns don't lie. People do. That night, I laid out the photos of Madison and Emily side by side. The dresses, the bracelets, the identical honeymoon destinations tagged online. Jake wasn't just repeating history. He was rewriting it. And if I didn't act soon, the next obituary might carry my sister's name. I thought the dead were done talking. But Madison had one more message to send. The smallest things carry messages. You just have to learn the language they whisper in. I didn't sleep much after Emily's call. The words, "he told me about her," kept circling in my head. Not because he'd finally admitted his first marriage, but because he'd chosen the timing. He'd told her right after I started digging. He was trying to get ahead of whatever I might find next. By morning, I was back at my laptop, scanning photos from Haven Bloom's old website. Every arrangement Madison had designed featured a single white peony. She'd called it her signature flower. There were little symbols hidden in the product names, too. Grace 12, Echo 5, Promise 19. Random numbers, at first glance, until I noticed that every number matched a date from Madison's short marriage: May 12th, June 5th, July 19th. Anniversaries of something she'd written about on her old blog. Moments she said changed how she saw her husband. 3 dates, 3 bouquets, 3 warnings, disguised as art. The blog was gone from the internet, but the Wayback Archive still had fragments. One entry from July 19th froze me. Trust doesn't vanish overnight. It erodes like petals after rain. One truth at a time. It was signed MLH and ended with a photo. A peony with half its petals stripped away. That entry was posted the day before she died. Late afternoon, Emily texted me. Emily. Hey sis, the trip's amazing. He showed me the old florist shop. Said it's where he bought flowers for his mom. My fingers trembled as I typed back. Me. Did he say what happened to the woman who owned it? Emily. Yeah. She slipped from a balcony. Terrible accident. He sounded so sad. He was rewriting again, erasing context until only pity remained. I called the florist who'd answered before. This time, she told me her name. Carla Reed. When I mentioned Emily's visit, Carla fell silent. I saw them, she said finally. They came by yesterday. He said he wanted to buy the shop again, reopen it under her name. Emily's? Yes. Said he wants to call it New Beginnings Florals. Same logo, same layout. Just new name. The air felt thin. He wasn't revisiting Madison's world. He was rebuilding it, petal by petal, around Emily. That night, another envelope appeared at my door. Inside, a dried white peony wrapped in tissue. No note, just a small printed symbol pressed into the paper, the outline of a single eye. I compared it to Madison's blog header. Same symbol. She'd signed her hidden warnings with that eye. Someone wanted me to see the pattern, or someone wanted me to think I had. I spread everything across my kitchen table. Photos, screenshots, timelines, symbols. Every thread connected back to Jake. Every line circled Emily. But one date didn't fit. August 5th, 2023. The florist site had a cached event listing. Private memorial booking. Henderson party. Tomorrow's date. I whispered to myself, he's repeating it again. When patterns become rituals, They stopped being coincidence. The storm outside thickened, wind tapping against the window like impatient fingers. I stared at the peony until the petals blurred. Then I opened a new note on my phone and typed, "If anything happens tomorrow, tell the police to look in Savannah. Haven blooms. August 5th. I hit save. And for the first time, I wasn't sure whether I was documenting evidence or writing a warning for myself. The flowers weren't just memories. They were countdowns. Every pattern leads somewhere. I just didn't know whether I was walking toward proof or a trap. By the next morning, the air in Atlanta had that heavy stillness that comes before a storm. I hadn't planned to drive back to Savannah so soon, but the date on the florist calendar, August 5th, wouldn't leave my mind. 4 hours of highway and questions. I kept picturing Emily in that shop, laughing, maybe believing she and Jake were just starting their life together. At the city limits, I passed a faded billboard that read, "Savannah Remembers." It felt like the whole town was whispering the same thing. Haven Blooms looked exactly as before. Closed sign, dusty window, the smell of old stems in the air. But through the glass I saw movement. Someone arranging fresh peonies inside. The door creaked when I pushed it open. A young woman turned, startled. "Sorry, we're not open yet," she said. Her apron read, "New Beginnings Florals." I managed a smile. "I'm looking for the owner, Jake Henderson." She nodded toward the back. "He rented the space for a private event. Said it's a remembrance for his late wife." Beautiful story, really. Late wife. Singular. He'd chosen which memory to keep. While she went to the cooler, I noticed a notebook on the counter, a delivery log, page after page of orders, but one caught my eye. August 5th. Special arrangement. White peony X12. EM. My pulse jumped. Emily's initials. "Who ordered this?" I asked as casually as I could. "His assistant, I think," the girl replied. "They said it's for a surprise." A surprise. The word made my stomach tighten. I stepped outside and called Emily, straight to voicemail. Then a text arrived. "Emily. At a beautiful place he wanted to show me. Says he has something to tell everyone later. Love you." Everyone. So there'd be a crowd, not secrecy. That eased me, just a little. Still, I stayed parked across from the shop, watching as delivery vans came and went. Inside, tables were being set, candles arranged, floral displays positioned in perfect symmetry, white peonies everywhere. It looked less like a memorial and more like a rehearsal. As evening fell, I recognized one of the workers leaving the building, Carla Reed. She spotted me and walked over, lowering her voice. "Rachel, right? He told us it's for a charity launch, but look around." She gestured to the banners inside. Each one read, "Madison Lee Foundation, in honor of love and new beginnings." A foundation, a public unveiling. He was turning both marriages into marketing. Carla shook her head. "Whatever story he's selling, people believe it. Cameras are coming. Press, maybe local news." I stood there on the sidewalk, the humid air thick with floral perfume, realizing how little power truth has once someone builds a prettier version of it. I could crash the event, shout the facts, make Emily hate me forever, or I could gather proof, quietly, carefully, and let the lies unravel on their own weight. I took out my phone, snapped photos of the signs, the guest list on the door, the delivery receipts. Then I left before anyone noticed. Sometimes justice isn't a headline. It's a record waiting for the right eyes to find it. Driving back to Atlanta, I passed a florist truck heading the other way, white peonies visible through the back window. Each bloom looked perfect. Identical, controlled. Identical the way every story he told seemed to be. I whispered to myself, "Not this time." The memorial wasn't an ending. It was a rebranding. And I was about to learn who helped him build it. Lies don't vanish when they're polished. They just shine brighter under the wrong kind of light. 2 days after the memorial, Savannah's local paper ran a short piece online. Entrepreneur Jake Henderson launches the Madison Lee Foundation to support grieving families. The photo beneath the headline nearly made me drop my phone. Jake stood at a podium, hand around Emily's waist, both smiling for the cameras. Behind them, a banner stretched wide. New beginnings, honoring the past, building the future. He had turned the story of his first marriage into a brand, and Emily, radiant, trusting Emily, was his newest ambassador. I read every line of the article twice, a foundation with anonymous donors, an Atlanta headquarters pending, and a new floral line, the Peony Promise Collection, to symbolize resilience and eternal love. The same flower, the same coded signature. Only now it had a logo and a tagline. I scrolled to the bottom of the release and froze. Among the listed board members was a name I recognized, Daniel Montgomery, my brother. I called him immediately. He picked up on the third ring, voice tight. "Rachel, don't start." "Don't start? You're on his foundation board." "It's a nonprofit. He asked for my legal guidance months ago. I didn't think—" "You didn't think? Daniel, he's manipulating you too. This is the same man who—" "Enough," he snapped. "You've been obsessed ever since the wedding. Jake's done nothing wrong. You need to let this go before you hurt yourself. Or Emily." The line went dead. Later that evening, a delivery arrived at my apartment. No sender, no card. Inside was a bouquet of white peonies. Tucked among the stems, a business card, the Madison Lee Foundation, and on the back, handwritten in black ink, "You're cordially invited to the launch gala. Atlanta, September 10th. At the bottom, smaller, almost hidden, "For the truth." I checked the event website. The guest list was public. Journalists, investors, public figures. And one curious entry that stood out, Carla Reed, floral consultant. He'd hired her. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about rewriting witnesses into participants. I drove back to Savannah one last time, meeting Carla at a diner off the highway. She slid into the booth, eyes darting toward the windows. "You were right," she said quietly. "Something's off. He's paying me triple to reproduce Madison's designs, exactly as they were. Every color, every arrangement. Does Emily know?" "She thinks it's a tribute to love, but it's a copy, down to the cent." I showed her the invitation card. "Do you know what this means?" She frowned. "Maybe he's trying to bait you." "Or maybe," I said, "someone inside his circle wants him exposed." Carla hesitated, then pulled a small USB drive from her bag. "I saved the original order forms. His assistant used the same vendor ID Madison used years ago. The account's still in her name." "You're sure?" She nodded. "Everything about this new foundation is built on hers. Even the tax filings trace back to the same EIN number." I exhaled slowly. He didn't create something new. He resurrected what he buried. Reinvention isn't the opposite of truth. It's what truth becomes when it's repackaged for applause. Back home, I stared at the USB drive, unsure whether to open it. If it proved what I suspected, the story would no longer belong to me. It would belong to headlines, lawyers, and people with more power than I could handle. But if I stayed silent, Emily would never see what she was standing in. I placed the drive beside the peony bouquet. The petals were already starting to curl at the edges. Maybe flowers aren't about beauty after all. Maybe they're just reminders that everything pretty wilts eventually. The gala would be his stage, but this time, I wouldn't be watching from the audience. Sometimes the truth doesn't hide in the dark. It rents a ballroom and charges admission. The Madison Lee Foundation Gala was the kind of event Savannah only saw in glossy magazines. The old Peachtree Hotel had been draped in gold and cream, chandeliers polished until they looked like captured sunlight. Valets guided luxury cars into a procession that glittered like a parade of borrowed power. I watched from across the street, half hidden behind a row of magnolias, my heart tapping a steady rhythm against the thin fabric of my dress. The invitation sat heavy in my clutch, proof I belonged there, even if I didn't. Inside, music drifted out through the doors, smooth jazz, the kind that made you forget to listen too closely. A perfect distraction. Once I stepped in, the air changed. Perfume, champagne, polite laughter, the room pulsed with curated joy. Emily and Jake stood near the stage, surrounded by cameras. She wore a silver gown that caught the light and waves. He, in a sharp black tux with a boutonniere of, you guessed it, white peonies. He was charming everyone, spinning stories about legacy, healing, new beginnings. If I didn't know better, I might have believed him. But I did know better, and I'd brought proof. Carla caught my eye from across the room, stationed near the floral arch. She gave a barely perceptible nod and brushed her hand along one of the arrangements. 3 peonies tilted inward. It was our signal. 3 meant the drive is in place. She had uploaded everything. The tax records, the vendor receipts, even an audio clip of Jake dictating emails to Madison's old contacts. All under the Foundation's public website, set to publish at midnight. Jake stepped up to the microphone, smiling like he'd never lost anything in his life. "I stand before you tonight," he began. "Not as a man mourning the past, but as someone honoring love itself. Madison's light lives on in all we do." Applause thundered. Glasses clinked. He looked over the crowd, and his eyes found mine. For the first time, his smile faltered. After the speeches, as guests mingled, I moved toward the terrace, where the air was cooler. The city below shimmered, oblivious. A voice behind me said quietly, "You shouldn't be here, Rachel." I turned. Jake stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, that same polished calm on his face. "Guess I couldn't resist a good party," I said. "Especially one built on stolen love stories." He tilted his head. "You really don't understand business, do you? This isn't business. It's resurrection. You're using her name, her Foundation ID." He stepped closer, his tone dropping. "You have no idea how much people want a story they can believe in. Madison's was perfect. Why bury perfection when you can sell it?" I laughed softly, not out of humor but disbelief. "So that's it? You turn grief into branding?" He smiled again, that easy charm returning like a mask snapping back into place. "Grief is just love with nowhere to go. I give people a direction." I studied him, the crowd still cheering faintly inside, oblivious to the quiet war outside. "You think you're untouchable," I said. "I know I am," he replied, "because no one believes the one who sounds angry. They believe the one who sounds calm." He turned to leave, but I stopped him. "Midnight's a dangerous hour," I said. He paused. "Why?" "Because that's when masks fall off." For a moment, confusion flickered across his face, then understanding, then fear. He turned sharply and disappeared into the crowd. I stepped back into the ballroom. The band was playing at last. Emily was dancing with him, her face glowing in the soft light. And for just a heartbeat, I saw it. The shadow of realization in her eyes. Something he said, something in the way he held her too tightly. It had begun. The cracks were spreading. I left quietly before midnight. Back at my apartment, I refreshed the Foundation's website. At exactly 12 Chang's a.m., the front page blinked, the logo glitching for half a second. Then a new tab appeared. Transparency reports. Inside were the files, dozens of them, open to the public. Names, dates, bank transfers, every skeleton dressed in financial linen, and at the bottom, a final line. "In memory of Madison Lee Henderson, may the truth bloom eternal." Some stories don't end with applause. They end with silence, and the sound of reputations collapsing under their own weight. Revelation doesn't make a sound. It just sits quietly, letting everything else crumble around it. The morning after. By sunrise, The story had already spread. News outlets from Savannah to Atlanta were running with headlines like, "Charity Under Fire, Financial Irregularities, Surface at Madison Lee Foundation." Reporters camped outside Jake's company headquarters. The foundation website had gone dark, replaced with a sterile message. "We are currently addressing technical issues." Technical issues. That's one way to describe a full-blown scandal. I watched it unfold from my couch, wrapped in a blanket, the glow of the television flickering across the walls. Part of me felt vindicated. The other part just felt tired. Emily. By 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. I saw everything. I don't know what to do. "Can we meet?" Emily. She wanted to meet at the Botanical Gardens, the same place Jake had proposed, the same spot they'd taken their engagement photos. It felt too poetic to be safe, but I went anyway. When I arrived, she was already there, standing near the fountain, her hair pulled into a loose braid, eyes swollen from crying. The moment she saw me, her composure cracked. "Rachel, everything you said, it's all true, isn't it?" I nodded. "I wish it wasn't." She sank onto the stone bench. "He told me you were obsessed, that you made up stories about Madison. But last night, after the gala, he disappeared. I woke up and his phone was gone. His laptop, too." I sat beside her. "He's not just running from reporters, Emily. He's running from exposure. The foundation was never a tribute. It was a laundering scheme. Madison's name made it look clean." Her lip trembled. "How could I be so blind?" "You weren't blind," I said softly. "You were in love. That's not the same thing." She looked down at her hands. "What do I do now?" "Tell the truth," I said. "Everything you know, everything he said. You go to the police before they come to you." Her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out, stared at the screen, then showed me. "Jake. Don't meet anyone. Don't talk to anyone. We'll fix this. Trust me." She deleted the message. By midday, the foundation's board had officially dissolved. Donors were demanding refunds. My brother Daniel called, his voice shaking. "Rachel, it's everywhere. They're saying the IRS is investigating. My name's on those papers." "You didn't know," I said. "That matters." "Does it?" He sighed. "He used all of us, even Madison's legacy." For the first time in months, his tone wasn't defensive. It was broken. Later that week, a local journalist named Maya Patel reached out. She'd been covering the foundation since the start. "I think people need to hear from you," she said. "The woman who saw through the facade." I hesitated. "I'm not the story." "You were the first to question him," she replied. "That makes you part of the truth." The interview aired that Sunday. I didn't watch it live, but I heard the segment opened with a line I'd said without thinking. "Some people don't lie to hide the truth. They lie because it's the only way they know how to stay loved." 2 days later, Emily called again. "He's back," she whispered. "He showed up at the house." "Did you call the police?" I tried, but he left before they arrived. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just said he forgave me. For what? For not believing in him. I felt a chill ripple down my spine. Manipulators don't lose their grip. They change their angle. That night, I went back through the files Carla had given me. Buried in one of the folders was a video recording, time-stamped the night before the gala. It showed Jake rehearsing his speech. Behind him, the floral arch swayed slightly in the air conditioning. He looked into the mirror, practicing his smile. Then, almost absently, he said to his reflection, "They always believe the story if it sounds like love." He laughed quietly, then repeated it again. The world would remember him as a con artist. But to Emily, and to Madison before her, he'd been something far worse, believable. As the weeks passed, reporters lost interest. New scandals replaced old ones. But for us, the echoes stayed. Emily started therapy. Daniel offered a quiet apology over dinner. Carla closed her shop and moved to Charleston. And I started writing everything down, not for views, not for virality, for record. Because truth, I realized, isn't about punishment. It's about preservation. The world will forget his name soon enough. But somewhere, in a quiet archive of truth, Madison and Emily's stories will stay written, in ink, not illusion. Some endings don't close a story. They clear the fog so you can finally see what was always there. 1 year later, spring returned to Savannah the way it always does. Slow, soft, almost apologetic. The peonies bloomed again, thick and white along the garden path behind my house. I'd once hated the sight of them. Now I tended them like they were old friends who'd seen too much but stayed anyway. The scandal had long faded from the news cycle. Jake Henderson, now infamously branded the Foundation fraud, had been indicted on multiple counts of financial misrepresentation and identity misuse. His plea deal made national headlines for a week. Then, like all viral tragedies, the world scrolled on. Emily didn't attend the sentencing. Neither did I. Some truths don't need witnesses. They just need distance. Emily's renewal. She moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and started over. A small floral business, fittingly named Second Bloom. Her first bouquet order came from a hospice center. She told me it felt right, creating something beautiful for people learning to say goodbye. She still sends me photos sometimes, always peonies, always smiling. She signs every message the same way. You saved me before I knew I needed saving. Carla mailed me a short note in June. No return address, just a Charleston postmark. Inside was a folded newspaper clipping, an announcement that a women's shelter had received a grant from an anonymous donor. Taped to it was a single white petal. On the back, she'd written, "Some roots grow back stronger." I didn't need to ask who the donor was. Some acts of healing don't want credit. My brother Daniel rebuilt his firm's reputation, though it took time. He apologized again, this time not out of guilt, but out of understanding. We started Sunday dinners again. Sometimes, between courses, we'd laugh about how silence can be louder than shouting, how the people you think are unshakable often hide the most fractures. It wasn't forgiveness that mended us. It was shared survival. 3 months ago, I received a package postmarked from an unknown sender. Inside, a small flash drive and a single card. The handwriting was unfamiliar. "For your records, the real ending." I hesitated before plugging it in. It contained one short video, no more than 30 seconds long. Jake sat in a dim room, no tuxedo, no stage lights. His voice calm, almost resigned. "Everyone thinks I built a lie," he said. "But really, I just built what people wanted to believe. That's the difference." He looked into the camera. "They never asked what I believed." The screen went black. For the first time, I didn't feel anger, just pity. Some people live their whole lives performing for mirrors and never see themselves. The next morning, I took the flash drive to the river and threw it in. Not as an act of defiance, as release. The water took it easily without ceremony. The ripples widened, then disappeared. I stood there a while, the sun low behind me, the city quiet. And then I smiled. Small, real, unguarded. I used to think justice meant punishment. Now I know it just means peace. Truth doesn't fix the past, it frees the future. I started telling stories again, not viral ones, not perfect ones, just real ones, about people who survived what they weren't supposed to. And every time I sit down to write, I begin the same way. My name is Rachel Montgomery, and once I learned that family doesn't always mean safety, but it can still mean strength, because some stories don't end with applause, they end with understanding.